From the 22 News Broadcast Center, this is a Decision 2016 special election, a Democratic Hamden County Sheriff debate with candidates Michael Albano, Tom Ash, and Nick Kochi. Now, here's your moderator, Barry Krieger.
Greetings and welcome to the 22 News debate among the three Democrats running for Hamden County Sheriff. We should point out that there will be 4 names on the primary ballot for the Democrats on September 8th, but Jack Griffin dropped out. The 3 candidates with us tonight, from my immediate left, Mike Albano, Tom Ash, and Nick Kochi. I will explain our format right after we hear a 1-minute opening statement from each candidate. Order was determined previously by a drawing. We begin tonight with opening remarks from Tom Ash.
Thank you, Barry. And thank you to Channel 22 for sponsoring tonight's event. I entered this race based on my belief that I had the best qualifications and best experience to serve as the next sheriff of Hamden County. I have 18 years of correctional experience working in two various correctional facilities, both Hamden and Worcester County. I also have 18 years of experience as an elected official, which has allowed me to work collaboratively with other government officials on all levels. During this campaign, I've highlighted several important issues that the next sheriff will have to face. Issues like the opioid epidemic, education, fiscal transparency, and crime. I presented a plan that addresses each of these issues. I look forward to the discussion tonight and also over the next 2.5 weeks. Thank you, Barry.
We will now hear from candidate Mike Albano. Mike.
Good evening, and thank you very much for sharing this conversation with us. My name is Michael Albano. Many of you perhaps remember me as a former mayor of Springfield. But in my former public service life, I was a probation officer in the Westfield District Court, appointed by 3 governors to the Massachusetts Parole Board, where I conducted parole eligibility hearings in every single correctional institution across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Any sentence of 60 days up to life sentence, the Massachusetts Parole Board considered eligibility. And with that, I offered many reentry and treatment plans back into the community. As mayor, I oversaw the 600-person Springfield Police Department working in strong partnership with Chief Paul Amira. And as a member of the Massachusetts Governor's Council, I have the awesome responsibility of confirming judges from the district court all the way to the Supreme Judicial Court. So I offer that professional experience and that political experience, and I believe that is the right balance to be the next sheriff of Hamden County.
We now will hear a 1-minute opening remark from Nick Kochi.
Hi, I'm Nick Kochi, and I'm running for Sheriff of Hamden County. Thank you to TV 22 for providing this opportunity to make clear the very real differences between us. I hope this debate will focus on corrections, on what the job of sheriff really is. I'm an academy-trained correctional professional, not a politician. I have 23 years of experience at the Hamden County Sheriff's Department, and I have risen to the highest rank of Assistant Superintendent. I oversee the daily operations of the facility presently today. Others will talk about their corrections experience, but I understand, and I hope you understand, that there are different levels of experience, and they are not all equal. I'm the only candidate that has designed in the rehabilitation programs that bring our offenders back to our community better and more productive citizens. I'm the only candidate that has the experience of managing a $75 million budget. I'm the only candidate that has the current sheriff's endorsement. That endorsement is from a man who knows the job. Thank you.
Tonight's debate will be in 2 segments. Our format will be question and answer. In the first segment, I will ask a question, and each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the same question. We need to keep time to our times to be fair to everyone. Again, order was determined by a drawing that took place earlier. In the second segment, the candidates will have the opportunity to question each other, 30 seconds for a question and 1 minute for each answer. Let us begin. Our first question will be posed first to candidate Michael Albano. Massachusetts, like the rest of the country, Mr. Albano, is dealing with a deadly opioid epidemic. An alcohol and addiction correctional center is already under construction in Springfield. Do you think that that is the ideal location for the addiction treatment center? And if not, where would you place it and why? Mr. Albano?
No, I have opposed the Mill Street Correctional Center. This is a jail in the middle of a neighborhood. And in addition, it is less than 1/3 of a mile from a $1 billion economic development project that MGM is constructing as we speak. It's also less than 100 yards away from a charter school, a very successful charter school. As a former mayor, I can tell you it's the wrong land use to put a correctional center in that location. I also oppose it in the north end. My plan is to bring the correctional center back to Ludlow and utilize Mill Street as a public health center for the neighborhood and also to treat those who have opioid addiction. In addition, I want to make sure that we change the criminal justice model of treating addiction to a medical model. We've lost over 800 lives in Hamden County since 2010. It's a deadly disease. The current model is clearly not working. So I want to convert the criminal justice model of treating opioid addiction into a medical model. Bring the healthcare professionals together and let's save some lives.
Next, same question to Mr. Cochi.
I'm excited about the opportunity to oversee and overtake the Mill Street Addiction Center. See, just last week I walked every square inch of the construction of Mill Street. It is conducive to treatment. The color scheme, the dormitory-styled rooms, the classroom and education rooms, the community rooms. We are trying to change lives for the positive. 62% of all offenders return to the city of Springfield. 82% of all people incarcerated in Hamden County have a substance abuse issue. This addiction center is necessary, and we've had 17,500 people go through our addiction center. We are saving lives, and we will continue to save lives on Mill Street.
Same question to candidate Ash.
Thank you. I do support the placement of the addiction center on Mill Street and have voted for it as a Springfield City Councilor. Having worked at the Sheriff's Department for 10 years, I know the positive aspects of the positive work that was being done at the old Howard Street facility. And I know that the placement of this facility in Mill Street will do great things for that neighborhood. I look back 30 years when they were placing the Howard Street facility down there, and there was great pushback from the neighborhood at that time. But if you talk to the neighbors that grew up there and lived there and saw that placement of the facility, and you ask them now if it was an effective use of that facility, they would say it was great. It transformed that neighborhood and provided stability to the downtown South End area. And so I think it will do the same thing at Mill Street, provide almost a police presence to that area, and it will stabilize it. I think it's a completely appropriate placement, and I support it wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Without a doubt, Sheriff Michael Ash will be a tough act to follow. Quite possibly what Mike Ash did as sheriff might not be how you approach the position. Please tell me what the Hamden County Sheriff does and what is the most important part of the job as you see it, and what would you do differently? Mr. Cochi, you're first.
Thank you, Barry. That's a very difficult question to answer in a minute. The Sheriff of Hamden County has the fundamental responsibility to ensure that everybody that comes to us in leg irons, in cuffs and shackles, they leave our facility and go back to the community less likely to be violent and more likely to be productive. This is an awesome responsibility to have when you punch that time clock every day. I look forward to the opportunity of serving as your next sheriff because I understand the obstacles these men and women will encounter while incarcerated and while going back to the community. And our reentry efforts and our support and our mentorship programs are exactly what it takes to give our offenders the opportunity to take a second chance at getting it right. I believe in second chances. I believe in helping people. And I believe in public safety. Thank you.
Tom Ash, you are next to answer this question.
Thank you. The primary role of the sheriff is the care and custody of the inmate population. That is clear. One of the most important roles, though, that the sheriff plays is the hiring of staff. The sheriff must surround himself with the top quality, most qualified people. The Sheriff's Department is a vast organization with many responsibilities, whether it's facilities, medical, other areas of the jail that you need quality individuals to assist the sheriff in the operation of that department. So that responsibility is serious and it's vast, and it's one that I would take very, very seriously, the hiring of staff. One of the things that I would change about the Sheriff's Department is the hiring now of the consultants that the sheriff has brought back that is playing a major role in the Sheriff's Department currently. Currently, the sheriff pays $350,000 a year on consultants, people who are in retirement making over $100,000 a year, thereby collecting 2 taxpayer-funded checks. That is a practice that is wrong and one that I will eliminate and do away with in my very first day on the job.
All right, Mr. Albano, you're next.
I know Mike Ash. I've worked with Mike Ash over the years. I helped Mike Ash get elected back many years ago in 1974. As a probation officer, we worked very closely with the sheriff and Jay Ash and others creating programs for rehabilitation and reentry. As a member of the Massachusetts Parole Board, we had the only program in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts called the Mutual Agreement Parole Program. So those who were sentenced and incarcerated could earn their way out through a parole. But they had to do things like be disciplinary free, get involved in programming to address the causative factors that led to the incarceration, have a solid work and home program. So we worked with the sheriff on those in probation and parole. I see the role of sheriff as much more global in nature. I want to tackle this opioid epidemic in a very strong way. We've lost 800 of our citizens in Hamden County, as I indicated to you in my opening statement, and yet still there's no plan to address this crisis. This is a public health crisis. People are dying virtually every day.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ash brought up hiring. Let's talk about how your employees will be hired. Voters are always concerned that politics, campaign donations, family connections, and political favors might come into play. What would your process be for hiring Mr. Ash?
Thank you, Barry. There's no question that in the Sheriff's Department and in many government entities that the perception from the public is that politics plays a role and patronage is prevalent. I'm aware of that, and as Sheriff, I will take steps to make sure that there is a transparent policy in terms of hiring. I will impanel a group of professionals to help me assist me in hiring the top level of staff that will need to do so immediately. I also make sure that our HR programs, personnel, is looking looking across the spectrum and hiring the very best people for all the positions in the Sheriff's Department. Clearly, the idea, Barry, that politics plays a role is absolutely the case, and it's something that we all have to be concerned about and be aware of as we go forward in hiring for the Hamden County Sheriff's Department.
Mr. Albano, you're next.
Well, not only is it the perception that politics goes on at the Hamden County House of Correction, it's the reality. So at the beginning of this campaign, I said I would not accept any campaign contribution from any employees, any vendors, any attorneys, anybody who does business with the Hamden County Sheriff's Department. And in addition to alleviate the concerns about political hires, I would also bring in an outside agency, at least for the short term, so that those promotions and those hirings are done pretty much like the Civil Service Commission does. You take an examination, you score, and then there's some ability of the sheriff to determine who's the best person for that position. But taking campaign contributions, I think, is a conflict immediately, given the perception and reality of what's going on at the Sheriff's Department, and also the hiring practices, I think, clearly have to change. So I'd bring in an outside agency. Let's go through this. Let's get the very best and brightest people to serve in this critical position.
Mr. Kochi, you're next.
I'm very proud of our hiring process to date. You have to take a written exam, then a physical exam, then you have 2 interviews before you even see the sheriff. Now, both my opponents, Tom and Mike, just talked about the consultants and how adamant they are against consultants, but yet both just told you they would hire an independent agency to come in and do the hiring process. We have about 850 staff at the Sheriff's Department presently, and each and every one of them contribute to a nationally recognized model that has been an award-winning facility from the President of the United States to Governor Patrick as well as Governor Baker. Our hiring process hires quality people. You need quality people to do a great job. I work every day with the men and women at the Hamden County Sheriff's Department, and I'm on record, and I'll say it again here tonight. I am proud of the work each and every one of them do, and I am proud to serve next to them every day. Our hiring practice has yielded a recidivism rate of 33.6%, the best in the nation.
All right, I would like to stay with this hiring theme, but go a little bit higher up in the food chain. My next question is, what will your administrative staff look like? Are jobs for the current staff safe? And would you put your own people in? First to answer this question would be Mike Albano.
Well, elections are about the future, not the past, and every administration, whether it's President Obama or Governor Baker or Mayor Albano when I became mayor in 1996, you bring your own team in. People who have a similar philosophy. That's just the nature of this business. Is it wholesale getting rid of everybody? No, and everybody will be evaluated. But clearly you want changes, and that's what elections are all about. So what I want to do is bring the very best and brightest into the Hamden County Sheriff's Department, but with a new vision. Sheriff Ash has done a great job for 42 years, but it's time for a change. There's no question about it. I want to focus more on health care for inmates. I want to make sure that we have the best reentry programs possible. I want to match up the jobs in the community with the skill sets of those who are serving sentences. And as I said before, I want to save lives. So that's going to take a new vision. It's going to take a new administration. It's going to take a new philosophy. But again, that's what elections are all about. And that's what you, the viewers, are voting for, the vision of the candidates to be the next sheriff of Hamden County.
Mr. Cochi, your turn.
Well, as you just heard from Michael, he's going to look and bring in quality people. So apparently, Mike doesn't think too highly of the men and women working at the Sheriff's Department presently today, unlike I do. Again, our staff has rendered national recognition. Will I look at each and every one of the positions and make a reassessment on those positions in a transition period? Of course I will. Nick Cochi's administration will be different than Sheriff Mike Ash's administration. There will be people brought in to do jobs or brought within our department to do jobs that I know they can do. But see, I've grown up at the Sheriff's Department. I've worked side by side with these men and women, and I know each and every one of their talents. And when I tell you, trust me, they are very, very talented.
Tom Ash, it's your turn.
Thank you. In the very first days of my administration, I will have an independent audit come in and evaluate all programs, all personnel, all procurement, all everything. And I will determine for myself which positions are necessary and which need to be tweaked or need to be looked at more closely. I know that based on the fact that I worked at the Sheriff's Department for 10 years, that the hierarchy is top-heavy. There are currently over 30 assistant or assistant deputy superintendents employed at the Sheriff's Department. And they're high quality, but that's a lot. In Worcester County, there are currently 8 assistant superintendents and deputy superintendents. We have to strike a balance. The next sheriff is going to be asked to do more with less. That's a very, very serious thing that the sheriff has to look at. The next sheriff is not going to have the clout that Mike Ash had for the last 42 years, and is going to have to make serious decisions around personnel.
Our next question concerns question 4, which will be on the November ballot, which would make recreational marijuana legal in Massachusetts, regulate it, and tax its sales. What I want to know is what your position is on the legalization and regulation of recreational marijuana in Massachusetts. Mr. Cochi, you're first.
Thank you. As we stand here and talk about an opioid crisis, I can, in good conscience and in good faith, fathom legalizing another drug. We are battling each and every day, and as a father of 3 boys, every day I worry about the opioid crisis. So to sit here and try to legalize another drug that I know firsthand through assessments at our facility to all the inmate population, that when you scroll back and see where did they begin to go down the wrong path, the use of marijuana pops its head up on many of their evaluations. So I am not in support of the legalization of the use of marijuana. I am not in support of adding another drug to the druthers of what our young students and our young population is fighting each and every day. Thank you.
Tom Ash, same question to you, sir.
The short answer and direct answer is no. I do not support the recreational use of marijuana. It has been suggested by some that marijuana is not a gateway drug leading to more serious drugs. I don't condone that. I don't agree with that. I think there's many cases, as been suggested already, that it does. Marijuana leads to other choices and wrong choices that are causing individuals to end up in severe problems with drugs. And I just can't, as a law enforcement person, condone the use of marijuana recreationally. Just won't do it.
Mike Albano.
Well, I differ from my opponents. The fact of the matter is that it is essentially legal now. It's been decriminalized, and the only problem, it's legal to possess it, but it's illegal to sell it or to buy it. I voted to decriminalize it. I voted for medical marijuana use, and I think it's about time now that we regulate the drug, marijuana, because quite frankly, people are using it. It's widespread use, and to think that you're going to make it illegal, I think is just backward thinking. So I would disagree with my worthy opponents. I believe now is the time to regulate it and make sure that we have the proper dose, the proper medication, and make sure that we take it essentially off the street and in the hands of regulators who know what they're doing with it, rather than this untapped drug that's out in our community today. Again, it's essentially legal now. It's been decriminalized. You can have up to an ounce, and that is just a wrong public policy. It sends the wrong signal. So you're either going to make it illegal or make it legal, but you can't be in the middle on this issue.
The last question in this segment. We're talking about a growing trend among police chiefs and police departments across the state to put drug-addicted suspects in treatment rather than put them through the courts and criminal justice system. What I want to know is, do you support treatment over prosecution? First to answer this question, Tom Ash.
Thank you. Anytime we can divert people from the court system into treatment is a win. We know, having worked in the criminal justice system for as long as I have, that many of the offenders deal with drug addiction and dependencies, and that it's a prevalent issue. So to the extent that it's worked in other areas, other parts of the Commonwealth, we shouldn't emulate that and take a look at what other police chiefs are doing. We know that this drug addiction is a scourge. We know that this opioid problem is a severe public emergency right now, and we ought to be treating it in that way. So any chance there is to divert persons from the criminal justice system into treatment is a win, and we should be looking at that.
Mr. Albano.
We've had treatment on demand in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts since 1976. If you have a substance abuse issue, if you have a heroin problem, an opioid problem, you are entitled to treatment prior to incarceration. Unfortunately, the legislature and governors in the past have not funded the appropriate resources. The hallmark of my campaign and the difference between my two worthy opponents, this is a public health crisis, ladies and gentlemen, and I want to turn the treatment model into a medical model, not a criminal justice model. This system is ill-prepared to deal with people who have addictions. So that is a fundamental difference. The police department, Barry, that you're speaking about in Gloucester, it's a great concept where people who have a problem can come to the police department, talk to the chief of police, they can get referred out, but they have beds available, they have treatment available. We don't have that here. So if you're going to embrace this medical model, which I want to do as sheriff, you have to have the necessary resources. I want to fight for those resources in Boston as I did for the Basketball Hall of Fame, for the Mass Mutual Civic Center, for Equal Education Opportunity Grant money when I was a member of the Springfield School Committee. We can do more, but we've got to change the model.
Mr. Kochi.
Well, I agree with Mike on the public health crisis. It is not a criminal justice issue. However, there are going to be times where people are incarcerated that have substance abuse issues. Therefore, the Hamden County Sheriff's Department will stand at the ready for treatment and programs for those people that have committed violent crimes. But for those individuals who have committed nonviolent crimes and they have a treatment substance abuse issue, they need to be diverted. There should be treatment over incarceration. It should not be institutionalizing a behavior because it's an illness. When you look at how many people are coming through our doors that have substance abuse issues coupled with mental health issues, we have got to put the help and the resources in the community. And we need the help of Beacon Hill to do so. I am strongly advocating for diversion over incarceration, and I will stand ready to continue to support with treatment and structure for the offenders that come to us that can't go the diversionary route, because they also need an opportunity to get it right when they get back to the community.
And that completes the first segment of tonight's debate. I want to thank you, the candidates, for keeping to your times. We hope that will continue in the second half. The candidates will be posing their own questions to the other candidates in the next segment. You're watching the debate among the Democrats running for Hamden County Sheriff on 22 News on the CW Springfield. Welcome back to the 22 News debate among the 3 Democrats running for Hamden County Sheriff. Again, I want to point out that there will be 4 names on the primary ballot for the Democrats on September 8th, but Jack Griffin dropped out of the race. The 3 candidates with us, Mike Albano, Tom Ash, and Nick Cochie. In this segment, the candidates will question each other. 30 seconds for the question and 1 minute for each of the other 2 candidates to answer and respond. We need to keep to our times to be fair to everyone. Again, order was determined previously by a drawing. Nick Cochie will ask the first question, which will be answered first by Mike Albano. Mr. Cochie.
As the Assistant Superintendent, I run the day-to-day operations of the House of Correction, the greatest component of the job of Sheriff. Can you please tell us exactly what specific experience you have in actually running the day-to-day operations of a correctional facility? And what is the highest rank you've achieved working in a correctional facility? Please tell us specifics, not vague references to law enforcement or other works that you may have done.
Nick, that's a good question, and clearly you have an edge in that area. But I offer a broad range of diverse training and experience, both in the field of corrections and at the State House in delivering funds for Western Massachusetts. So clearly you have me on that one. But if you look at reentry programs and my experience on the parole board, I think I've got you beat there. Working with the courts, I think I've got you beat there in my service and probation. Administering the security of a city, you're securing the institution of the Hamden County House of Correction. I've been in charge of securing the security of an entire city, 152,000 people. So yes, you've got a slight edge on that one, but in overall, I believe I have much more experience on the criminal justice side and also in elective office. This is a political position, clearly, and you have to go to the State House and know how to deal with the Senate President and the Speaker and the Governor. I've got a good relationship with them where I outscore you and outpace you on that. So you win that battle relative to the day-to-day operation, no question about it. I think I've got the experience and professional on the other side.
All right, Mr. Ash, your response.
Thank you, Barry. I'm glad to answer this question regarding my career in corrections because it's vast and it's diverse. I began my career walking the old tiers at the York Street Jail in 1988. I went on to work at midnights at the Worcester County House of Correction when I was in college to help to defer my college costs. I came home and graduated from the rigorous Correctional Academy in Ludlow and worked for 10 years for Sheriff Mike Ash. 7 of those years I worked in the day reporting program, which is a bridge program to inmates who are getting back into the community. And it's a program that I was first of its kind in the country and one that I'm very proud of the work that I did there. You know, my experiences have been widespread, and the highest role that I had was a director of a community-based program in Worcester called the Worcester Community Corrections Office in Webster. It was a great program. I did great work there, great staff, and we impacted hundreds of lives in that program, making sure that clients were clean, that they were afforded opportunity to have education and a job, and it was great work, and I'm glad of the work that I did and glad of the closeness that I worked with the court system in Worcester as well.
Mr. Albano will ask the next question. First to answer will be Tom Ash.
Tom and Nick will answer after. I want to applaud both of you for your career in public service. Both of you had distinguished records. I do want to ask you this question, though. I was the first one to bring up changing the model of the criminal justice system to treat opioid addiction to the medical model. You're coming along lately, but why have you been so resistant? The current model has not worked.
Mike, I certainly agree that that model does need tweaking, which is why I was the first to put out the idea that we need treatment on demand immediately. Currently, there are 5 living units at the Ludlow facility that are not being used. They're shut down because the inmate populations are low. One of those units is in the pre-release center. I propose that we use that unit, 77 beds, immediately as an opioid treatment center, not on a criminal commitment, but on a civil commitment, where those families who are most in need, their loved ones are most in need of treatment, can go in front of a court, in front of a judge, and say, we are at wit's end. We need a bed now. So we ought to be using those 77 beds. As taxpayers, you pay for those beds. They're paid for. They're sitting there. All we need to do is staff them. I'm going to do that. I'm going to make sure that it's a reality so that families, those 800 families that you mentioned earlier that lost a loved one over the last 5 years, can have some relief, can have a fighting chance to get the work that they need.
Mr. Cochie, your response.
Well, Mike, I disagree that you were first. I was first in the race for sheriff 2.5 years ago. And I absolutely agree and said that it needs to be a medical model, not a criminal justice model. I understand because at the jail right now, our healthcare model is nationally recognized. It's about continuation and continuity of care. So when I first announced, the first thing I said is that we had to work on behalf of a drug court in the city of Springfield. And I sat with the Pioneer Valley Project and I signed on to their petition to go down to Boston. And we got that court. And we're still now waiting for the judge to be appointed and the resources to be allocated. And with that, we feel very confident on our medical approach to the opioid crisis. And Tom, I have to disagree with you on bringing people to civil commitments into a criminal justice setting. It is not conducive to treatment. It is not conducive to a positive change in someone's life.
Next up, we have Tom Ash asking the question, which will be answered first by Nick Kochi.
The inmate population has decreased significantly over the past several years, resulting in the closing of several living units, and the correctional officer staff has been reduced by 90 employees. However, the number of assistant superintendent and deputy superintendents, almost all of whom make in the excess of $100,000 annually, has not decreased. I will reduce the number of senior administrative staff. What is your position on the issue?
Well, Tom, again, that's not correct. Under my direct supervision, we had an assistant superintendent retire, and I went to the sheriff and I advocated that we put that position on hold and reallocate our resources so that we could, at that point, shuffle to accommodate the drop in our population. Yes, 33.5% our population has dropped since 2010. We're so proud of that. It's the great work that the men and women are doing each and every day. But when you look at the drop in population, you also have to look in the drop in resources and the amount of correctional officers needed to do those jobs inside those pods that are closed. When you talk about consultants, you talk about bringing people back. The sheriff has not replaced several of those consultant positions. The consultants are there, really what they are is part-time workers doing the work at the sheriff's department that they've helped produce and forge for many, many years. So I take a little offense, Tom, to the effect that you think we're top-heavy. We're a model around the country. We are #1 in the country for a reason, for our administration, for our middle managers, and for our correctional line staff.
Mr. Albano, your response.
Well, there's really no question that you're top-heavy. You have 29 plus supervisors when comparable facilities across the Commonwealth have nowhere near that. And you're also paying some of the highest wages in all the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I find it hard to believe that the Director of Security should make $25,000 a year more than the Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I find that the Director should be making more than a Superior Court judge. These salaries are way, way out of line. So I have proposed reducing the number of supervisors from 29 to 6. I put that in written form. And the other part, I would use that money because you have the highest ratio now of inmates to correctional officers, 77 to 1. It's one of the highest in the country, and it's very, very dangerous. So I would hire more correctional officers, and that's probably one of the reasons why they have endorsed me over my worthy opponents. The Correctional Officer Union, by a wide margin, has endorsed me because they're looking for fundamental change at the supervisor level and with their own ranks.
Our next question will be from Nick Kochi, which will be answered first by Mike Albano. Mr. Kochi.
I have worked for 23 years directly combating and addressing the opioid crisis with the Sheriff's Department. I have sat with the Speaker of the House, I spoke directly with the Senate President, and I have testified on Beacon Hill on this issue. Mike, as Governor Counselor, what have you specifically done to address this issue in your tenure as Governor Counsel? And to Mr. Ash, as presently being on the City Council, other than taking a vote with the City Council on something like C3 policing, what have you personally done, hands-on, to fight this opioid crisis?
Well, Nick, I was writing treatment programs before you even know where the York Street Jail was, working with Mike Ash in probation. I was writing treatment programs and re-entry programs, a member of the Massachusetts Parole Board for 12 years, all across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And you asked me my position, what do I do on the Governor's Council? Well, Nick, I'm not sure you know, but we confirm judges from the District Court all the way to the Supreme Judicial Court. And I can tell you, myself and my colleagues on the Council have led this effort to make sure that we get judges who know what they're doing when it comes to this opioid crisis. It's a whole new world out there, and we've got to have judges that understand that this is a medical condition It's a disease, and it's no place for the criminal justice system. So you don't violate somebody's parole or probation for having a dirty urine, for example, and sending them back to jail. This is an addiction. It's a disease, and it's going to take people at all levels who know what they're doing to fight this disease. So I hear what you're saying, but again, I will match my reentry experience with yours any day, and that's my role as a member of the Governor's Council.
Mr. Ash, your response.
Thank you, Barry. Nick, you mentioned earlier that that you would be opposed to the use of the facility for a civil commitment, that was a wrong idea and a wrong approach. I can tell you now that they're doing it in 2 Department of Correction facilities in Massachusetts, in both Framingham and in Bridgewater. So it's a model that's already in place, that's working. We know it works. We know we can do something about it. And the fact that we're not doing anything about it is the real problem. So I proposed very early on in this campaign that we use those beds, and I'm going to get back to it, because they're sitting there idly. No one is using them, and people are dying. That is the crime. So we got to open those beds. We got to get the resources. We got to look at the top-heavy staff to make sure we can realize the monies to do so and open up those beds for those families who are most in need.
The next question will be from Michael Albano, to be answered first by Tom Ash. Mr. Albano.
I want to again commend you for your service in working with Sheriff Ash over the years. As you know, I had to file legislation to ban the strip searching of women inmates, the videotaping of strip searches of women inmates by male correctional officers. Judge Ponsner ruled it to be an unconstitutional practice, and I filed legislation at the State House that is under active consideration now. Tom, I heard you discuss it one evening. Nick, I have not heard your response to this public policy, which has been deemed to be unconstitutional and absolute invasion of privacy.
Mr. Ash.
The fact that we have to even discuss this is outrageous. How it ever came to be that male employees filmed and videotaped female inmates changing and undressing is unconscionable. I don't know how we ever got there. As a result, we cost the Commonwealth and Hamden County $2 million to settle that. I can tell you it would never, ever come up again under my administration. Thankfully, hopefully it never will under anybody's. But it's outrageous, and it should have never happened, and it never will happen.
Mr. Kochi.
First of all, Framingham and Bridgewater are not a treatment setting for civil commitments. Yes, they're using them. It doesn't work. Those are mental state hospitals, at least Bridgewater. They don't work. And Mike, you talked about all you've done on the Governor's Council. You talked about how you've appointed judges. You're the one that's out there in this race telling us we haven't done anything in Hamden County to support this opioid crisis. And now you're going to step back and say that you've done a tremendous amount by appointing people that are doing a bunch of good things. We have to pick which side of the road we're going to drive on, Mike. As far as the women's strip search policy goes, it was a policy that was rolled over from a male institution. It wasn't a good policy. But I can tell you this presently today. There is no filming of the strip search when it comes to the females or the males at both facilities. But understand this. Strip searching in a correctional institution is paramount. It's paramount for the safety of that individual themselves and for the safety of the men and women who work there and the other offenders involved that are living in those institutions. Thank you.
Tom Ash will ask the next question, which will be answered first by Nick Kochi.
Sheriff Ash supports a policy of allowing retired jail employees to return to work to the jail as consultants, thereby double dipping, collecting 2 taxpayer-funded checks. He calls the plan, quote, a win-win for the public. I believe this is outrageous and will do away with the practice. What is your position on the policy?
Well, Tom, you're not going to do away with the practice because you said earlier today at least you're going to hire consultants. You just may not bring the men and women back with the 25 to 35 years experience that can help you each and every day to maintain a legacy of professional excellence that has been recognized by the President of the United States as well as the governors of Massachusetts. I have been on record to say in my tenure, in my first weeks of sheriff, I will reevaluate all the contracts and they will be terminated that are there on behalf of Sheriff Mike Ash. But I will not give up the ability to retain any contract that I feel a Nick Kochi administration could use to help us maintain the level of professionalism and the level of excellence that we have and that's been noted and modeled around the country. So I say to you, Tom, when you have people that can help the team, you don't leave them on the bench.
Mike Albano, your response.
Well, Nick, that's a good loyal answer, and you are a loyal player to Sheriff Ash, and I certainly appreciate loyalty. But the question was the 24 consultants who are retirees who are now coming back on the payroll. Jay Ash, for example, makes $104,000 a year, plus his health insurance on retirement benefit. Now he's back at the jail at $51,000 a year. Nobody does that across this Commonwealth. Suzanne Bump, the state auditor, criticized Governor Baker for bringing back a handful of people. This is a practice that's gone on for way too long. I've asked Senator Eric Lesser to file legislation to limit consulting contracts to no more than 6 months. No one's opposed necessarily, Nick, to consulting contracts, but you don't have them for 7 years, especially when you're the sheriff's brother. It just sends a very bad signal to the taxpayers of Hamden County, and more importantly, to the workers at the Hamden County Sheriff's Department. It destroys morale, and that's why it has to change. And I'm just shocked that you haven't called and asked the sheriff to terminate it now.
Mr. Cochi, you're next with a question, which will be answered first by Mike Albano.
Well, I think it's time we ask a consulting question back to Mike and to Tom. Mike Albano and Associates hired Tom Ash as a consultant in 2008. While Tom was a member of the school committee, Mike, what precisely did Tom do for Mike Albano and Associates, and who were the clients of Mike Albano and Associates at that time? Tom, was this employment relationship revealed or on a disclosure form when you ran for city council, and were the taxes paid on those earnings of that consulting contract?
Mr. Albano, your response first.
Well, Nick, as I said many times before, elections are about the future, not the past. You want to go back to 2008 and talk about my relationship with my friend Tom Ash, that's fine. But he brought things to the table. That's what he does. He knows government. He knows agencies. And part of the business of providing services to governmental agencies is to rely on people like Tom Ash. He had a short-term contract. It was less than about $1,000, I think, in salary. So if you want to make a big issue out of something that happened in 2008, Nick, you're certainly entitled to. But you ought to take a look at Jay Ash and the salary that he's making as a consultant, and you ought to tell your boss, the sheriff, enough is enough. You said you're going to terminate it in January. Why not terminate it tomorrow?
Mr. Ash, your response.
Glad to answer that question, Barry. As Mike said, going back to 2008, 2009, to work for a couple of months in an arena that I'm very familiar with in government and working with politics and so on was a natural. And I'm thankful that Mr. Albano gave me the opportunity to do so. It was short-lived. He said it was $1,000, which I paid taxes, which I wasn't required to report because it was a consulting base and I wasn't an employee. So if that answers your question, I'm glad to do it. But as Mike said, let's get back to the serious issue of real consultants and real money, Nick, okay? $350,000 a year. $350,000 a year to consultants, and you haven't taken a position on it. You should be demanding that that act stops now, today, be done with it. You want to talk about a $1,000 consulting contract? Then that's fine, we can talk about that.
Mike Albano, you're next. Please address your question first to Tom Ash.
Well, I want to address this comment that was made at the Massachusetts legislature by my worthy opponent, Nick Cochi. And what he said was, relative to this epidemic, was this. What was once the heroin junkie in the dark inner city back alley has now become brother, sister, mom, dad, son, and daughter. It's hit suburbia, USA. This is exactly what was wrong with the criminal justice system and the leadership in Hamden County. This is a medical issue. These are real people that are dying every day. So I'm going to ask the question, what would you do, Tom and Nick, differently, and how do you address that statement, which appears to be racist to me?
Tom Ash, you're first.
Well, I agree. It's a statement that I certainly would never make. I know Mr. Coach was taken to task by the NAACP for that statement. I'm keenly aware that the problem around opiates has been prevalent in our community or in the nation for a lot longer than the last couple of years, more like 70, 80, or 90 years. And we're just catching up to working on plans now. Again, the idea that we need to address it quickly, we need to move on those 77 beds in the pre-release center is something that we need to do yesterday, not tomorrow, not anytime other than right now. People are dying every single day. It used to be that we knew someone who was affected by cancer. Now, everyone knows someone who was affected by this opioid crisis. Again, it was an outlandish statement, I agree, one I would never say, and one I know that Mr. Cochi probably regrets.
Mr. Coachy, your turn.
You know, Mike, I asked you a question on consulting, and then it had to do with your consulting criticisms of the Sheriff's Department. What you just asked me was a low blow. I made those exact comments, and they were taken directly from my mouth and put into transcript. And my meaning was 2 decades ago, when I started working at the Hamden County Sheriff's Department, opioid abuse and opioid druthers was a real life issue. And I take offense. We stand on the same issue here. We stand on the same side. And when I went to the NAACP and spoke with them, they agreed we stand on the same side of the issue. I was taken out of context. I stand and I walk with all the men and women that are afflicted by this awful substance abuse issue. But I won't go back on my comments. I meant what I said. We should be ashamed of ourselves that it took this issue to go to USA Suburbia before we took the time and the effort and the resources to combat it. I stand with everybody moving forward, and I will continue to stand at the top of the perch and advocate for resources, and we're not going to allow this to only be an issue that is taken care of when certain people want it taken care of.
Right now, a question from Tom Ash, first answered by Nick Coachy.
Recently, there were 2 major incidents regarding involving the Hamden County Sheriff's Department. One was in regards to an inmate walking undeterred out the front door of the jail in Ludlow, and the other involved a videotaping of female inmates by male COs. Which incident do you see as more serious, and what would you do to ensure that it never happens again?
Well, Tom, I take every incident at the Hamden County Sheriff's Department serious. I take a count that doesn't come in on time serious because we could be missing another body. I take the person that walked out of our facility, I take that incident extremely serious. December 2nd, I'll never forget it. I got the phone call and I went to the jail. Within 8 hours, we had that individual back into custody. But that's not the problem. The problem is he found himself outside the facility. We have put in place many security protocols and heightened our security management system to make sure that never happens again. And I think I've already answered the question on the strip search. It was a policy that rolled over. It's been changed. It will not happen again. So I'm very proud, and I will stand proud on our record when it comes to security and strip searches and any other policy that comes to any disorder management at the Hamden County Sheriff's Department, because that's what I do every day. And I work hard on behalf of the people of Hamden County to keep them safe.
Mr. Albano, your response.
Well, that's the exact reason why I'm opposed to neighborhood jails. That's why I fought Sheriff Ash in the North End and Wasson Avenue. That's why I'm fighting him now on Mill Street. We have a hearing on that one coming up on September 23rd. Relative to the strip searches, but let me just, before I get to the strip searches, it also speaks to the issue of the strength of the correctional officers. As I said earlier, we need far more correctional officers. That ratio of 77-1 is dangerous, and it leads to these types of incidents. You can't blame the COs. You can't blame the COs. You have to blame the leadership because you don't have enough COs, and we have too many administrators at the top. Relative to the strip searches, I don't know what else I can say. It's just, it was the only place in the country that did that, where male correctional officers were videotaping strip searches of women inmates. Every woman in Hamden County should be outraged. It's a policy only done here. Thank God Judge Posner stepped in. It's unconstitutional, and my legislation is still pending, so it doesn't happen here ever again or across the Commonwealth.
All right, that concludes the question and answer part of our debate among the Democrats running for Hamden County Sheriff. Now, each candidate will have 1 minute to make a closing statement. Order was determined previously by a drawing. We will hear first from candidate Nick Coachy, then Mike Albano, then Tom Ash. Mr. Coachy, you may begin.
Thank you, Barry, and thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time to watch this debate. It's important that you know the very real differences between me and my opponents. Who you choose as your next sheriff will make a difference in many people's lives. Yours, maybe your family's. For 23 years, I've worked continuously at the Hamden County Sheriff's Department, starting as an academy-trained correctional officer and rising to the ranks of assistant superintendent overseeing the daily operations of the House of Correction. I've personally developed the programs and helped offenders return to our neighborhoods as better fathers and mothers, better brothers and sisters, and better husbands and wives. I have worked my entire career to fight the scourges of drug dependency and doing all I can to provide help for those who want it. I am asking you to vote for Nick Cochie because I have the experiences and the skill set to be your next sheriff on day one. I've helped build the very institution and the nationally recognized programs that my opponents here want to run. To me, this is more than my next job. This has been my life ambition. For 23 years, I've served you as a correctional professional, and it will be an honor to serve you again as your next sheriff of Hamden County. Please consider Nick Cochie for sheriff on Thursday, September 8th. Thank you.
Mr. Albano, your turn.
Thank you for sharing this conversation this evening. This is the Democratic primary. It's a Democratic primary. I'm very proud to call myself a Kennedy Democrat. And I believe that government has a role to play in the lives of our citizens. But, ladies and gentlemen, government has failed you big time. When you lose 800 lives, 800 of our citizens in the last 6 years, something is wrong with the model that we are using. We have to do better. This is about saving lives. That's why I have, from the very beginning, talked about making this a medical issue, not a criminal justice issue. So I'm changing the model. I'm changing the format. With that, I want to use the power and the authority of the office of the sheriff to do it. It takes experience in Boston. It takes experience in Washington to bring back those funds and to change the legislation necessary to do what I want to do to save lives. I've talked about my 32 years in the system. It's 32 years more than Mike Ash had. I've talked about 20 years of elective office. It's the perfect balance, in my view, between professional experience and elective office. I ask for your support.
All right, thank you. Each of the candidates went a little bit over 1 minute. If you want to extend yours, you may. Not too long. Mr. Ash, you have the last closing statement.
Thank you, Barry, and thank you to Channel 22 for sponsoring tonight's event. And also thank you to the viewers who tuned in to watch this very important debate. After 42 years, any organization or institution requires a fresh set of eyes to review the practices and policies of that institution. The person you elect sheriff will face many challenges and require new and modern approaches. What separates me from my opponents is my unique and vast correctional experience. I worked for 10 years at the Hamden County Sheriff's Department and 8 more years at the Worcester County Sheriff's Department under 4 different sheriffs with 4 different and unique correctional philosophies upon which I'll be able to draw from as your next sheriff. I am unquestionably qualified to serve in this role. I have the energy, experience, and passion for the job, and tonight I ask you for your support and your vote on Thursday, September 8th. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank the candidates for coming here to our 22 News studios to participate in this discussion, this conversation, as you called it. This is an important election in Western Massachusetts. We have not had a new Hamden County Sheriff in more than 40 years. A reminder to our viewers that we held this debate among the Democrats because there will be a primary to narrow the field of 3 Democrats to 1 candidate on September 8th, which is a Thursday. Your vote counts. It always does. It does even more so this time. We also invite you to stay with 22 News throughout this election season for the latest information and developments in this and any other race that's going on here in Western Massachusetts. And a reminder that this debate in its entirety will be available online on our website at wwlp.com. Thank you once again.
You've been watching a Democratic Hamden County Sheriff debate. Be sure to stay with 22 News through Election Day for continuing coverage of Decision 2016.